Are we ready?
Turn that shit up. You have now entered Staying on Point, powered by Digital Sucker Punch. Discussing all things business, fitness, and marketing. You're about to go on a deep dive interviewing some of the best in the business when it comes to thought leaders, entrepreneurship, and business. Buckle up, put your seatbelts on, you're in for a ride. And welcome back to another episode of Staying on Point. We've had a bit of a hiatus with all COVID going on, moving locations. As you can see with the different background here behind me, we're in a beautiful sunny location here in Sunshine Coast, Australia. And today's guest is someone that I'm excited to interview and have a good chat about and really geek out about marketing and Facebook ads particular. This is somebody that I consider a trusted authority in the space, in a sea of gurus and marketing experts. This is truly one of the good guys that really knows his shit, and I'm excited to have him on board. And please, without any more delay, let's welcome Nehal Kazim to Staying on Point. I'm just going to patch you in, my man. Hey, buddy, how are you going?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me on.
No problems. Thank you. Thanks for coming on, man. What's been happening? Long time no speak. How's things at your end of the world? Give us a little bit of feedback. Run back.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Medellin, Colombia, and the biggest thing for me personally is, I'm about to get married from a month from the time of this recording. So we're supposed to get married earlier. COVID happened, and so went from a bigger event to now it's like 8 people, and that's like the biggest thing that's happening right now in my life, man.
Fantastic. It's always good. It's always good when you can look over our business world and really. I mean, there's actually a post that you made a while back, and it still resonates to me to this day. And I think because it was almost like a twist on a marketing term, but you know that marketing term ABT, always be testing. You put up ABC, always be celebrating. I'm not sure if you remember doing that post at all. And I was just like,
absolutely.
What? This man knows. There's no, it's true. You've got to be celebrating. You've got to appreciate life. You've got to, appreciate the wins. And the fact that you just opened up with a personal thing that is, something that you're looking forward to. And I really appreciate you saying that. So fantastic. And so it's an intimate wedding now. It's going to happen in Medellin, Colombia, or is it going to happen somewhere else?
It's going to happen in Cancun. So we're going to do it in Medellin, but that's not possible. And so, Cancun.
Yeah, cool. And is it just close friends and family, or how's it gonna look like for you guys?
Yeah, it's basically just the family and a couple of friends. So yeah.
On the beach?
On the beach, yes, sir.
Linen draped. I just picture you white linen walking down the beach with one of those frames with the lights draped over it and maybe some flowers and just a beautiful setting. Don't let my imagination.
Maybe I got to make that
happen. I don't want to dictate your wedding.
We got to make that.
But that's funny. But congratulations. I'm happy to hear that. That's phenomenal. Good stuff. So to you and your wife to be. But hey, let's get into what we're really here to talk about. Let's geek out on all things marketing, digital marketing, Facebook ads. Obviously, you are the founder of Ads Pro, which is an e-commerce specific digital marketing agency. Again, like I said, you are a trusted authority in this space. I've come to you for advice, guidance, and strategies, tech, all that sort of stuff. So I look to you as the man in the know. So let me ask you first off the bat, how are you navigating through all the stuff that's going on with COVID, and then recently with Facebook just wanting to put the hammer down on bans? And did you have any account bans across your clients' accounts? How did you deal with it? Was everyone in panic stations? What do you keep it cool? Or is it all hands on deck? What's your take on everything that's happening, say now and over the past 3 to 4 months, or 6 months even? Sorry.
For sure. So as soon as COVID happened, it was devastating to a lot of businesses. It hurt some of our clients, but what we did was we just went all in, man. And that was such a blessing in disguise. Like from the time pre-COVID, right before COVID to right now, our business has almost tripled. We've developed our agency side where everyone on our team is basically like getting paid more, and we built out a done for you service from a creative standpoint. So our team went from about 6 people to right now we're like 18, 19 people. So I haven't dealt with that level of complexity before. So, new challenges there. But from a client standpoint, we were managing maybe around like 700,000 a month or something like that. And I set a goal the previous year. I was just like, you know what would be amazing, man? I want to manage $1 million a month. Like that was the thing for me, just because I've never done that before. I never used to track that before. We track it on a daily basis right now. Basically, if you don't track it, then it's harder to accomplish that goal, but it's very difficult, almost impossible to know how you're doing across the goal other than just curiosity on a random day. So we have a person who's dedicated just to tracking that goal. So we went from about maybe 700,000 a month in spend. So basically on my birthday or just before, we hit $1 million a month in spend, which was July. Right now we're getting to 1.4 million a month. That's what we're managing right now. We're about to get to 1.8 to 2 million, hopefully a month in ad spend across until the end of the year. And that's across about 6 accounts, 7 accounts. We have some smaller ones, but they're actually part of like a bigger like a group, basically. So the main thing that's really happened is we've learned that we can take companies from 6 figures a month to 7 figures a month. And so this year, hopefully by the end, latest like Q1 of 2021, we'll be able to take 4 companies from 6 figures a month to 7 figures a month, and so profitably. And so super excited about that.
That's fantastic. And yeah, something I wanted to clarify there and clarify with you for anyone that's listening, that's profitably. So it's just not a matter of going, hey, listen, we can spend this amount of money. I mean, anyone can spend money. You give it to Facebook, they'll spend it for you, but this is profitably. So, and that's a huge feat. And particularly to do it such across a small amount of clients really shows that you know your stuff. So congratulations to you and your team. Now, what do you feel that the key contributing factors to be able to do that is? Is it the fact? No, and just to clarify, you're talking about Facebook and Instagram ads only, correct?
Only.
So, what do you feel that is the key contributing factors in order to do that? And let's first discuss from a business perspective, because obviously the brand that you work with, it makes all the difference, and then what your process from your side enable to do to allow you to do that. There's two sides of the equation. Let's discuss the business side first. What does the ideal client look like to you in order for you able to scale them from 6 to 7 figures?
Yeah, I think it starts with vision, man. So a lot of our clients want it. It's so obvious, but if you don't want 7 figures a month or building an 8-figure company, then it's harder to accomplish that. It's hard to just stumble to 8 figures, Sure. It's easier to stumble to 6 figures or 7 figures. It takes effort to get to 8. And so it starts with them. It starts with their desire to, and then from our standpoint, we're also making sure that we have the right fit, where if the market has the ability to spend 200,000, 300,000 a month or more in ad spend. If that's our goal, and especially we're responsible for front end acquisition, if that's not possible, it'll just be harder to get to the $1 million a month or more, especially when we're talking about Facebook as the primary leader, and we're talking about 30% or more as a percentage of ad spend to revenue. So I think that's where it starts first, of how aggressive they want to be on their advertising or how profitable they choose to be. And then we actually work on the technical. And of course, they need to have inventory and all this kind of stuff in order to scale. But really, it's first the entrepreneur, then that vision that they have. Then what does it look like from a financial standpoint of cash flow and acquisition and first-time customer versus returning customer, all of that. And then we get to the technical.
Sure. Fantastic. And do you have a sort of a typical avatar, if you will, persona of an ideal client for you able to achieve that with? So when you onboard a new client or you're talking to a new prospect, how does that look like to you to go, yes, tick, 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 we can achieve this for you, or no, hey, you need to put this in place first, or sorry, unfortunately, we're not able to work with you because, you just don't have that foundation in place for us to be able to get you to where you want to be yet.
Yes. Yeah, so our like minimum is like 50,000 a month or 100,000 a month in ad spend. Like
Yeah,
that's like where we like to start if
sure.
possible, just so that we can scale. Because usually when we come in, we can improve like performance by 20 to 50% in the first quarter. And so when we're coming in, when we're looking at 50,000 to 100,000 in spend, there's usually enough where within the first week or 2 weeks, they've basically paid our whole fee. And then now we're able to even go a lot further. In terms of what the client actually looks like, we prefer higher average order value. So we prefer closer to 100 as much as possible.
Yep.
We have one outlier that has a $600 AOV that normally we don't take. We usually take like recurring type of customers. So AOV, the higher the better. Second is if their market size is large enough for us to really jump in and like make the most of it in terms of how Facebook's algorithm works, how important creative is, the way account structures are changing on Facebook's algorithm in order to go wider. That's really important. If there's a sole focus on Facebook and there's no effort on email or CRO or promotion calendar or product launches, it just makes our life so much harder. The clients who are so much easier to work with, especially businesses that just are more profitable, is when they have a promotion calendar, when they're doing ideally product launches of some sort, they're working on their email, they're working on conversion rates and AOV, our job becomes easier. So if they choose consciously not to work on that, or they just don't value that and all the pressures on Facebook, it's just not a fit.
I agree 100%. Yeah, fantastic. And then let's move things away from that and go to the other side when we talk about the technical aspect of Facebook. How does that look like for you guys? So you've onboarded your ideal client, and then you're ready to sort of, pardon the pun, but put the pedal to the metal or balls to the wall, and really push things for them. Again, the reason why I'm asking you this because I believe you to be one of the trusted authorities, that the good guys in the industry, that you have a phenomenal skill set in this particular realm.
Yeah, so what happens is the first thing that we do is we track everything that we possibly can and get a baseline. I think when people don't do that, they don't know what success is, what failure is, or if what maintenance looks like. So what we do is we track about 35 metrics every single day. It's up to 50 for some brands, but usually around 35. We track 3 types of metrics every single day of like total clicks, total add to carts, that kind of thing, costs per each one of those events, and then ratios of each one of those events, and then any kind of profitability metrics. We look at all of that. If it's in really bad shape or doesn't exist, really what we're trying to do is set a baseline at the beginning, and that could be 1 week max, really. We will get a really good fit of what's going on. The first thing that we do is always account structure. Rarely is creative the first thing that we do, just because it doesn't matter. Like it's not usually the biggest lever in the beginning. It's just, is the account set up correctly? Does it allow us to objectively look at naming conventions? Are they testing creatives or testing audiences correctly? Are they escalating and graduating, scaling their campaigns correctly? Automations, those kind of things, and our KPI and our data, data that we're looking at. Then once we have some sort of baseline of like, here's what's going on in Facebook land, here's what's going on in real life and cash flow, cash collected, profitability on a daily basis, now we can connect them and see what's real, what's not, and how big is the gap between Facebook and real life. And then we work on creative, then we work on avatar development, then we look at email and support them in whatever other way that we can. But at that point, once we have a foundation, then we know everything to ignore, and it's usually 1 to 3 metrics we actually focus on.
Fantastic. And those metrics are?
Depends on the client. So we have an ad scorecard. So what we do is we look at 7 different parts of a business, and that's everything from the offer, the avatar, the funnel, the nurturing, the ad optimization, and the tracking decision making. Like all of those are the 7. We decide what to exclude, what to ignore. And I think this is such a big challenge in Facebook world and Facebook advertising, is you want to pay attention to everything. I think we're just master of like ignoring a lot of things in order to laser focus on, is it delivery cost? Is it conversion rate? Is it average order value? Is it the actual CPA? Is it the gap of what we think the CPA is versus what's actually going on in the business? And a lot of the times, what their CPA is super healthy. They just don't know how to reconcile it and see what's really going on in their business to make high quality decisions. And so it really depends on what the core issue is. For most clients, like the core issues we see all the time is there's no clear way of testing audiences, no clear way of testing creatives, no way to find a winner and scale, and then no way to figure out how to scale even further once you've found a scaling method that works for that specific account. Sure. And so no testing of creatives, no audiences, no scale like initial, and then no further scaling that happens after you're hitting metrics. And so once that's in place, especially when we have a really big vision, like $1 million a month, or obviously it could be higher, but for most brands we work with, that's like super far or like a big aspirational thing. Once that happens, it's so much easier to actually like get there in a stepping stone, like milestone way.
So, I mean, you guys go into a lot of, depth, a lot of data there, which is, ultimately diving into the data makes the decision, the numbers don't lie, and what you can measure, you can grow, you can scale. So I noticed that you've now brought in a done-for-you creative service, and the more that I've been in this game and more that I understand direct response marketing, particularly about Facebook ads, it was really shifting towards, that whole adage of creative is king. And particularly when you're working with a lot of brands as well, I think one of the biggest bottlenecks that we encounter, besides all the other stuff, is the ability to provide constant creative to allow for testing, for scaling, for everything else that sort of gets thrown at you. Now, what was the inspiration behind starting the Done For You creative service, and how integral to your current business operations do you feel that it is, and how does that fit into where you feel that things are going to go in terms of Facebook ads in the direct response marketing world? Because it is utmost importance, I believe, at this stage. Right now where we're at is creative. The game is creative.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens is that when you're maxing out Facebook advertising, like technical, and you're maxing out maybe a couple of others where you've captured most of the game or like a lot of the conversion rate optimization or email or product launches or whatever, you have to figure out what the next lever is going to be. And for us, over and over again, it was creatives. And this is one of those things that people just didn't have in-house. And especially most of our clients weren't recording videos, weren't recording assets, weren't providing us photography or videos or any of that stuff. And so what we had to do was we had to get creative. And so we created our own internal processes of how to pump out creatives and how to do them in a systematic way or more modular way so we could test exactly what's working, what improved, how are we actually seeing what's working or not, whether it's keywords that are working or template style that's working, etc. And over again, that was a thing that made such a massive impact. And so we decided, how do we create that into a system, and then how do we allow that to create it for media buyers and be able to deliver it at scale. So we went from having no one working on the team to right now we have about 8 people working on the team, and just creating momentum and making that happen from a creative standpoint. So creatives are key for people in e-commerce. If you're launching 1 or 2 creatives a month and you want to get to 1,000 a day spend or more, once you have the technical part down of Facebook ads, then the biggest lever after that is creatives usually.
Yeah, fantastic. And typically for you guys, in from the experience in that aggregated data that you have, what are the top converting creatives? Is there a particular type of template format? Is it user generated content with a title at the top and text, and then maybe some subtitle at the bottom, or is it sort of a teach and pitch? Is it a static image with a rendered product image and a nice colored contrast background? What do you typically see with your accounts that you're managing that is hugely successful for traffic and conversions?
Man, the dream is that a system that generates new testimonials every single day. Yep. Like that's like the dream from a creative standpoint. And we're working on ways to do that, but it's not possible for every brand. I think it's very difficult to get high quality creatives, and there's some issues, whatever, but what works for us, if I could choose one type of creative, it would be testimonials, like user generated content all day. Not every single user-generated content or video will convert. Not every single person will resonate. But as a whole, there's almost nothing that's comparable. After that, what we've seen is like, we've seen stuff all over the place. Like we're limited to what type of assets a client provides. So what I would love to test more of is unboxing, or I would love to test more of is influencer specific and like walkthroughs and application of products, or like walkthroughs of, you know, how to use it, whatever, right? I would love to test that. I just haven't, because it's been a limit based off of how we operate, or based off of the type of clients and budgets we have. But after that, it's really like surprising to me, but it's like GIFs. So GIFs of, you know, very quick animations, or like animated videos where, you know, there's a product and then there's like 4 different features or 4 different ingredients, like that kind of stuff works very well. We've done like very simple carousels or different highlights of different products, like that works really well. We've seen that the more we try to complicate it or try to like outsmart like the process, it doesn't really work. So, you know, like UGC is, people just say like, hey man, I love it, you should try it. They're like, cool, I'll do that, you know? And then there's here's the, one of our products that, you know, we couldn't beat this one ad campaign, or like an ad creative, which was just the product and a black background on the back. You know, we're a creative agency, so the perspective, like that part of it is the creative agency. So the expectation is you're going to send us cool shit that converts and looks awesome. But we couldn't beat a background. We tried 20 different backgrounds on the back of it just to see what might hit. We animated the backgrounds 10 different ways to see, okay, is it fall time? So let's try the fall. Let's try school. Let's try scholastics. Let's try in the school versus outside of the school, in home environment with the parent. Like we tried a bunch of stuff. Nothing worked better than like that black background for the longest time. And so just on like what works, we have like 8 different types of creatives that work, but at the end of the day, you just got to test. So most people are severely under testing creatives and creative style. They launch one type of creative primarily and just keep recycling that, change colors and change text. That only goes so far. And then they don't test audiences enough. And so if you don't test the creative style and you don't test the audience, you'll think it's a creative problem or a Facebook ad problem or a conversion rate problem, but it's actually just a testing problem.
Sure. And then obviously that all falls back into, you know, what is the allotted budget that the client has provided you in order to, one, get a performance and also allow for testing, because, you know, I mean, from my experience as well, as soon as you start adding that testing process in, and it can pull down that return on ad spend, particularly when you're looking at it from a return on ad spend count-wide perspective. So it's that fine balance, it's that fine game, and it's why this is not a set and forget cookie cutter process, is it? Fantastic.
It is not, and you know what you mentioned with you know, the Facebook lock, like the ban hammers that they did. Most of our clients lost an account or 2. The max, so most of our clients have anywhere between 4, like on the low end, 3 or 4 accounts, as many as 7 ad accounts per client, because we're isolating and testing different elements and different strategies on different accounts, and we don't want that to affect other strategies that we're testing. And we do that for stability as well. So because we have so many accounts, if 1 or 2 go down, we still have others that are already warmed up, ready to go. So that's something we had to develop over time. But man, I like slept like a baby. Like I did not react. I didn't freak out. No one on our team did. We're obviously like checking and doing our best. But when I saw thousands of people's ad accounts go down, like my appeal won't do anything.
Sure.
Like that was just the reality in that situation. And so I think for you guys, it's probably worse because it happened during the nighttime for us. So we're like, I guess we're going to go to sleep. But for you guys, it was right in the morning.
I woke up to it. I woke up to it, checked online, jumped in Slack, spoke to the team,
right,
and then started seeing my emails going,
right.
Facebook. I'm like, fantastic. Great start to the morning. Yeah. But yeah, it's just one of the... It's a beast that you have to deal with, you know, and it comes part and parcel with working in this space. But it is certainly it can cause a lot of stress. But I want to dive into something that you just mentioned about, you know, creating multiple accounts for your clients and, you know, what that looks like, why you do that, and the sort of success that you've had in doing so. Because a lot of people don't do that. A lot of agencies don't do that. We don't do that. We have maybe 1 or 2 accounts, which is fine, and we test. And I understand the concept, the theory behind it. But I'd love to pick your brain a little bit more and sort of, go dive deeper into why you do it, how effective it is for you, and what the outcome is from, running multiple accounts and what that looks like for you guys.
Yeah, so we usually don't do that until after we get to 1,000 a day in ad spend. So before that, it doesn't really make sense. Also, with new ad accounts now, they're setting all kind of weird limits. I've heard as low as $50 a day. We have dealt with $250 a day. And then until the actual billing cycle repeats, or until you have a number of billed transactions, then you can open it up and it starts increasing from there. So so that's why for us, we don't want to be in a situation where if things are working and we can't scale, there's a pretty big opportunity cost, or if we have to wait. So where this really came from is we do primarily ad set budgets. So that just for more, for the people who do Facebook advertising, or people who don't, there's 2 types of main campaigns you can set up based off of ad sets, where the budgets are at the ad set level or the campaign level. If you don't know what that means, it doesn't matter. We have 1 type of strategy we use primarily until we get to 1,000 a day. Once we hit 1,000 a day, then we're creating additional accounts, usually. Even if we haven't hit 1,000 a day, sometimes we'll do it just to warm accounts up. But the reason we do that is because we have 1 core testing account. Then we have 1 core scaling account, but really it ends up being multiple scaling accounts.
Sure.
And so what we're doing, we created this strategy for us that's called cruise control campaigns. And this is a thing that works for us. Again, a lot of people have their own way of doing this. There's no perfect way, but for us, this is what works. So what we do is we have 1 core account for testing and our core spending account. From there, once whatever works in that account, we move it to another account and start scaling in that account. Once that happens, additional accounts are there for individual strategies. So we call this cruise control accounts or cruise control campaigns, where we are setting and forgetting, but that's only in the boundary, in the sandbox of 1 account. And we call it campaign DNA, where we'll do a specific stack of the campaign DNA, where this is what the actual settings are for this cruise control campaign, and then we don't touch it. If it works, it keeps working at 1,000 a day or whatever number that we're setting it at, and it runs. And assuming it's hitting metrics, we just let it do its thing. If it's not, then we change it and set up a different account structure. But the reason we do that is so we have multiple accounts at 1,000 a day, approximately, hitting metrics, and we have other accounts where we do our testing and scaling more actively.
Yeah, fantastic. And, contrary to popular belief, or I suppose some marketers are clued in on this, that each account does hold its own data. It's not necessarily pixel data, but it holds that data, and it attunes to different styles of methodologies of scaling, to optimizing, to all that sort of stuff. So is that the core motivation behind that? Is because if you're doing multiple test variations and multiple scaling methodologies on the 1 account, it's really hard to sort of get a true, accurate cohort of data for it to grow and 1, give it scale, less volatility, 2, allow that scalability, 3, just for more control, I suppose, ultimately.
All of those. So basically, this came out of necessity, because what happened was that we were doing ABO and CBO campaigns. That's ad set budget or campaign budget, right?
Sure.
And so we're doing both of those in the same account, and we're seeing crazy flip-flops. And so what was happening is one day ABO was working super well, and then the next day it completely flops and all the conversions go to CBO, and then we keep seeing that, and we're like, wait, what's going on? This is impossible. It can't happen like this frequently and this predictably. And that's one of the reasons we started splitting it up. And then now, we still have ABO and CBO sometimes in accounts, but we're not as concerned about that. The real thing that we wanted to test were these cruise control campaigns, and those are more set and forget. And we saw that there was too much volatility if we kept it in the core accounts where there's a lot of activity. So that's a big part of it. And then the other main part was that in the past, if you set up a new account, you were basically starting from scratch. But now with Facebook's changes and algorithm updates and all that kind of stuff, it's the same Facebook page, it's the same pixel, it's the same domain, it's the same funnel, right? The only thing is the difference is the actual account. And so what used to take a very long time to warm up, now it's warming up super quick, almost as if there's no warm up time. Like it's not like we see crazy volatility for a month or 2 months until the account is warmed up. It's almost from the start. So that's like a huge, positive element of the new accounts, where you're just able to create that, have more stability, and let it run.
Yeah, fantastic. And so let me ask you, just off the back of that, we've seen a lot of changes with Facebook, and obviously we're going to dive into a lot about Facebook because that is your core competency, your core area of expertise. How do you see things going over the next, say, the rest of this year, leading up into 2021, in terms of the algorithm changes, ad performance from top level campaign and ad account performance, and just the whole Facebook ads landscape ecosystem altogether? Is any, I'm not asking you to make predictions, but just from your own
Sure.
assumptions and expertise and experiences and so on and so forth.
Yeah, people who get in with drop shipping, I think, is going to be even more difficult. And I think that's like the biggest thing, like that we don't really play a part in at this moment, because a lot of what we do is brand building, and a lot of what we do is we get over the $1,000 a day spend mark, and we do our best not to be super profitable at that point. Because would you rather be like profitable when you're spending, like, would you rather have like super high ROAS spending $200 a day, or would you have decent ROAS spending $2,000 a day? And the numbers, the actual cash on hand and actual cash collected and profit generated is just so much higher once you have momentum. And so momentum is just harder, and consistency and volatility is just so much more difficult when the average order values are low. So we're huge fans of higher average order value, and then obviously the second part of that is higher lifetime value.
Sure.
So, but a lot of people, a lot of business owners don't think about this. They're just like, look, this is what it sells at the mall, or this is what it sells at on Amazon, and like this is what I'm going to sell on Facebook, and then make my numbers work. But then there's no back-end strategy. There's no way to increase lifetime value. There's no way to increase average order value. It's just like, this sells. I know I can sell it, but what is forgotten is like the actual margin and profitability part. So the biggest thing is, from like the future of Facebook advertising, like we're still active, but we've also like started launching YouTube. We're learning about like TikTok and Snapchat and like figuring out that. A year ago, no one who was doing Facebook ads would say like, oh, we got to diversify. Most people are talking about stability and diversification and like safety of their business manager, like all of that kind of stuff. Even right now, right now when we're recording this, the AdPro's Facebook page went down for some reason. All of our account stuff is good, but ours went down. And so even after the Banhammer stuff, when we got everything back, we haven't got ours back. And so it's frustrating. Like it's not, no one's really safe from it. So we're working on it. And so the thing is, in terms of like the future, what used to work was super transactional advertising, and I think that's just gonna like go away more and more and more.
Sure. So you think the whole trend of omni-channel marketing and multi-channel marketing it's going to become more and more prevalent and more, I suppose, important for people to adapt to that type of marketing. Again, obviously,
Yeah,
Facebook is
absolutely.
the holy grail, but it's not the be all and an end all. And we can show that just leaning on that one channel source just opens up so much vulnerability to us all. It's funny you said that, because we've had a few of our client accounts disabled, as you do. We've had one of our clients' accounts, Facebook pages, being disabled for no apparent reason, and that seemed to be actually proving more difficult to get activated or reactivated quicker than it was for accounts, even working directly with our rep. It's for such a multinational conglomerate that Facebook is, their back-end team and everything that goes on behind the scenes seems to be an absolute shambles, an absolute mess. And the fact that there's such a large ecosystem and economy that's based around the platform, it really sort of baffles me how there can be such volatility and volatility to everyone involved. Really blows my mind sometimes that we can just be left with our hands in our pockets.
And so we have a client right now spending $500,000 a month, and just today, on the day of this recording, like their Facebook page just went down, so they can't do any advertising. Their rep is working on it, and we're making it happen. But the reason I bring that up is because this is not an environment for like stability, coasting, and just like easily getting to whatever big number you want. I think this is like very difficult when it comes to advertising, and if you don't want to play the game, like don't play the game for the people listening, because this is not like, oh, I'm just gonna like hang out and learn about Facebook ads. Everyone is posting case studies. It must be so easy. It's like quite the contrary. So if you want like more stability and simplicity, like do email marketing. You know, this is like very high intensity. You can't control any of the actual variables. Like this is part of the reason we started the DFY creatives. There's an input, you buy a creative, we do the creative, you get the creative, and that's the whole business, you know? Facebook advertising is we press a few buttons and maybe we'll have an ad account tomorrow. Like that's not a healthy, sustainable thing, you know? So it's high risk, high reward, lots of stress, and if you aren't willing to manage that stress and figure out how to navigate you and figure out how to navigate a team and the ecosystem of Facebook advertising, it will chew you up and spit you out, and people just become a victim to it and complain. And so either you react and adapt, or you just choose not to play, and that's cool too.
100%. And you know what I constantly say back to our clients or anyone else that's sort of in this space is that, you know, Facebook is a fantastic qualified traffic driver. You can make it work to convert customers on the front end. You can create a fantastic elaborate funnel that's going to nurture people and convert them, but ultimately it's, you know, what you do with that traffic on the back end, and that's, you know, that's where the real secret sauce is, and that's how you're going to scale a brand. And when people get that past their head that Facebook isn't just an ATM that you put, you know, your card in and get cash out, that it's there to drive traffic. It's what happens with that traffic that you do that traffic. That's where the secret sauce. That's where the secret sauce is when it comes to this ecosystem of e-commerce. Let me ask you about ancillary platforms. So you mentioned things like TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube. I shouldn't say YouTube is ancillary. I think that's a fantastic channel, which traditionally it's used from more of a branding perspective, but I think more and more people are leaning over towards using it from e-commerce and understanding that how we can use that and leverage that for conversions, and how we can sort of manipulate the videos to see where the drop-off rates are and when we can put a call to action, how we can get people to try and elicit a response from watching that video. That's a whole nother art form on its own. But right now, putting Facebook aside, what do you feel are the top ancillary channels that we should be keeping an eye on and perhaps learning about and utilizing within the whole ecosystem of e-commerce moving forward?
Yeah, I think if you're creating content, like that's my big, I guess, caveat. If you're creating content and you're building content around your brand, then I would prioritize the actual YouTube side, because once you get a click or a view on YouTube, then they explore. And the lift of your content is incredible. So if you're not creating content or creating any sort of like supplemental, anything to support that becomes a problem, or you're not really maximizing it. We're super like focused on YouTube at this point. So we have one account that we're spending about $200,000 a month on Facebook. So now we're trying to duplicate that on YouTube. And then the second account, we have one that's spending $500K on Facebook, and we're trying to figure out how to do that on YouTube as well. But to your point, it is direct response, but not as much. There's actually a halo effect that happens after the fact. So that's number one. Number two, like, I don't have enough experience here, man. And I think the main reason it's happening right now is because all of our clients don't have this avatar. And the avatar is just younger, and they're on TikTok, and I'm like super jealous, and I want to make that happen. Like, that's the thing that I really want to go after, because I feel I'm already late, honestly. Like, it feels like that, because things go viral so easily. People are quietly like creating massive brand awareness campaigns that actually lead to conversion. We do have like, I'm sure you have colleagues as well, like spending money on TikTok and seeing great results. That's, I think, like the biggest like next frontier, I think.
Sure. And in saying that, obviously TikTok's been something I've set up the business manager account. We've run a few TikTok ads for our clients. It's never been something that we've pursued as a primary channel source for our own brands and our clients. But in terms of the platform itself, and then, all the other sort of behind the scenes stuff about it being China, and, it's a spy tool and it's going to get banned in the USA, do you feel that's a cause for concern, or what's your take on that?
So look at it this way. When Instagram was coming up, it was like no one was really using it. And, I was single at the time, and then all the girls are using it. So all the dudes started going to Instagram. And then it was like it started picking up steam. And then from an advertising standpoint, it hit. And then influencers and ads happened at the same time. And it blew up, man, from a business owner standpoint. And so I think the same thing's going to happen with TikTok. It's already there basically now. And what people are charging from an influencer standpoint, as well as how easily things go viral, you can't compete with that. Even if they're not exactly your audience and, quality of the person, 1 million views potentially is still high quality, million views.
Sure.
We don't know really the value of that yet. But yeah, man, a lot of my clients are marketing to 35, 45, 55-year-old people, and TikTok hasn't been the priority, so not yet.
Sure. But it's funny you say that, because I remember a while back listening to Gary Vee. Not that I listen to him often, but this is a while back. And he talked about when he was preaching Snapchat back in the day, saying, Snapchat this, Snapchat that. And he said the fastest adopters of Snapchat at that time was 45 to 55-year-old women in the US. And it sort of gives you a bit of understanding that typically with adoption to a new platform, and obviously depending on the features and so on and so forth, you'll get the young audience, and then that would automatically pull down another audience. You get that creep, you get that age creep. And I feel probably TikTok in some way or some form will do the same. It will start to appeal in some form to an older genre. It may have new feature updates that will allow them to express themselves in not having to dance or dancing or singing. That's probably a little bit more natural to that age group. And then obviously it opens them up to a whole new demographic. And something that you mentioned before, which is quite, I think, a valid point to mention, is the halo effect. And I think the halo effect of everything that's done, and getting those conversions, or getting at least that brand awareness, but ultimately we're here to get conversions, getting those conversions from the omni-channel, and I liken it, I'll revert back. I liken it to Facebook ads, and I always say this to our clients: the more money that we spend on Facebook, we'll see an incremental increase through direct, through organic, through Google search, through email marketing, because we're building up your email list and filling up your flows. You'll see that incremental correlated increase of conversions through all your other channels, because Facebook's such a fantastic channel traffic driver. And again, I think plugging in those other channels that have such a great reach, like Instagram, like TikTok, will ultimately just add to that halo effect of what we're doing.
And Google Analytics is not the way to track that. It's impossible to track.
And which was going to be my next question. I was hoping that you'd pull out a holy grail. It's how do you track your halo effect conversions? I was hoping you'd say, so have you got a trick up your sleeve for that one?
Right. It's just this mathematical.
Yeah.
So do you know how many hours I've wasted on arguing the attribution of this side? Sure. It's really complicated, and I don't think there's an answer, but here's how we do it. So we look at ad spend to revenue ratio, and we see how much of that, as the ad spend stays the same, what's actually attributing or creating that revenue. If it's product launches and promotions, that's different. But if it's a stable business, what are the actual elements that might increase it? So the couple things that people don't look at is they don't track that number, ad spend to revenue. So if you generated $100,000 a month in revenue and you spent $30,000, your ad spend to revenue ratio is 30%, right? Sure. But the other thing people don't calculate, there's two additional numbers to seeing where this is coming from, assuming Facebook or any other one traffic source is the leading traffic source for you. So for Facebook, we track every single day what was the ROAS that we got, the return on ad spend, on Facebook that day, and what was the ROAS to store-wide revenue. So what was the difference between what Facebook says we got versus what we actually got in the store cash on hand?
Sure.
And if we're able to see that over a longer period of time, we can see what the gap is. So for some stores, it's like 50%. For other stores, it's 200%, Facebook being their main driver of their business. And so if you don't know what that gap is, that's like a huge gap, because what we've seen, two things have happened. Either the ROAS number on Facebook will drop and your ROAS on store-wide will be the exact same, meaning you're as profitable as you were before. Either a halo effect is happening or your ROAS is dropping and something is going on Facebook. But what we've seen actually is that Facebook is underreporting, especially with all this browser stuff and all this compliance and legal issues that are happening in the ecosystem. But what we've seen is actually Facebook numbers drop. We think we're doing worse, but then we check real life and we're doing as good, if not better. And so we actually change our Facebook metrics in order to be as profitable or more profitable. It's happened like a few times now, where it's super frustrating. So like, first thing is people don't check ad spend to revenue number and they don't track variability of that. Second, they don't look at what's happening on Facebook end of day versus what's happening in real life end of day. So that's a second. And then third is they don't look at delayed attribution. And delayed attribution, for anyone who's new to this, is basically you'll see inside of Facebook on a specific day, you might have got $30 CPA, like $30 cost per acquisition. But then when you go back in 30 days, your $30 same day that you got $30 might be $27 or $25 or $20. And that's called delayed attribution. So someone clicked that day and ended up buying within 28 days. And so people don't account for that. And the more complex version of this is we can see what the delayed attribution is on cold traffic, on retargeting traffic, and overall in the business.
Sure. But that is a bit of a hard sell sometimes to tell to the client. You know, when they're looking at their Facebook dashboard and go, hey, listen, you're going to go, the results lower, but then, you know, hang on, but your money in hand is the same. So either they're thinking that, hey, listen, you know, our other efforts are yielding a better result and this is not, you know, and this is where it becomes very, very challenging to sort of decipher what's what, and I suppose really having those tough conversations with your client and being open and honest about everything that you do, and ultimately, it's a tough one. That attribution is a tough cookie to crack.
Dude, it comes with trust, right?
Sure.
So clients know that we're not trying to just spend a bunch of money. Like, we get compensated at this point primarily based off of ad spend. But if we're not hitting metrics, we're not going to scale. Sure. And we're not hitting metrics just on Facebook world, like what's going on inside of Ads Manager. We're looking at real life metrics. What's our cash flow? What's our profitability? You know, how much are we spending? How much revenue is coming in? All that kind of stuff. And so we're not trying to spend money just to spend money. And once that trust is there, then you can have actual difficult conversations, because the entrepreneur or even the media buyer doing the Facebook ads, when the company is doing $50,000 a month versus, you know, $200,000 a month, $500,000 a month, $1 million a month, people change, and there's different fears and insecurities and doubts and concerns and all that kind of stuff that come up. And so people need to grow throughout that whole stage, or someone might get stuck. Like, the business owner might be at $1 million a month already, and the media buyer might be too scared, you know. So that happens too.
And it comes back to that whole saying, mindset before skill set. I want to flip it up just quickly a little bit, because I'm sure anyone listening, you know, this is the stuff that people really want to know about, and you know, it's ultimately about scaling ads. So have you got a technique, a method, the Nehal method at the moment that you find that is working for scaling your client accounts, that you're willing to divulge, willing to share?
Yeah.
Now, I remember a little while ago. Sorry to just put you on pause for a second. I remember a while ago you did an interview with Molly Pittman, and you mentioned a scaling method that you had, and it was all around CBO, and it was all about launching campaigns at a certain time, and then checking metrics every couple of hours. Based on those metrics, you do a certain activity, and so on and so forth. You know, has much changed from that? Have you got any more inclusions to it? How is that falling into the whole grand scheme of what you do day in, day out?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what's so funny? Like, if you look at most gurus or people who teach Facebook ads, there's no more methods, or like there's not that much like, here, just do this and it's gonna definitely work for you, bro. Like that's not happening as much. And the reason is because Facebook is so unstable, man.
Yeah,
It's changing so much. What is literally working week to week or month to month is changing all the time. So
sure.
we actually have to change our perspective. Our perspective now is, here are a series of tools. Which tool is working specifically for this account, for this brand right now? Is it working? Which creatives are working? Max that out the best we can. Get ready for the next one. That's how we have to operate. And so I can share a few of like the tools and how we go about it and what our like scaling architecture really is. All right, so here's how we look at, from our standpoint, how we actually go to scale and how we look at different milestones in the business. So the first thing is like, how much are you spending, right? So if you're spending less than $1,000 a day, this is how we go about it. We're testing two main types of campaigns. One is we're testing a Facebook controlled campaign. So what that means is we have it completely open to the Facebook algorithm and we let Facebook decide what's actually working. This is really only good if you already have been spending on Facebook for a while, if you're hitting most of your numbers or close to it. And most people don't have a scaling issue to get to 1,000 a day. Usually it's like a target or metric that they're not looking at correctly or they're not tracking correctly in order to know if you're serious about, if you must get to a specific profitability in order to get to 1,000 a day. I definitely get that. We just feel that once you get past 1,000 a day, a lot changes. There is the ability to test more from an audience standpoint, a creative standpoint, account structure standpoint, and you can be a lot more aggressive and even have the next breakthrough or double spend even quicker once you get past 1,000 a day. A lot of good stuff happens at 1,000 a day. So for us, from our perspective. So first type of campaign, I'm just saying.
No, good
stuff happens. First type of campaign that we do is Facebook. Sorry.
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay, but I just said I love that saying that a lot of good stuff happens at $1,000 a day. it's a nice. I want that to be your quote.
I'm telling you, man, it's massive. So first thing is, so when we're talking about just getting to 1,000 a day, that's the main thing. So what kind of campaigns are you setting up in order to get there? So two types. One is Facebook control. Facebook control is open age, so no limit on the age, no limit on gender, and in some cases we're leaving it completely open, so there's no interest either, so you could try that. Or what we prefer is like audiences that are bigger, like 10 million audiences plus. Of course, in Australia, like, smaller countries or any kind of regions that are just generally smaller, just choose something that is still, at least millions of people if possible, and you just let it run. And so that's more of the Facebook controlled method. The part of that as well is we use dynamic creative. And a lot of people, some accounts that post IDs work best. I'm sorry if people who are listening to this aren't Facebook nerds, we can go deeper, but basically we prefer dynamic creatives instead of post IDs, and that works very well for us. Other people hate dynamic creatives. So that's Facebook controlled.
Yeah, perfect. And I'll just quickly, for anyone that's listening, dynamic creative is basically where you can put up a different couple of variations of your creative, your copy, your headline, your description, and basically Facebook cycles that around and selects which are the best performing ones and serves that up to that audience. Fantastic feature. I feel reporting not so good, just missing that last key component of actually displaying which is the combination that performed the best, so that you can then go pull that and actually create the top performing creative. In an ideal world, Facebook, if you're listening, Zuckerberg, introduce that. That'll be phenomenal. But yeah, okay. So that's the first stage of what you guys do. What's next?
That's the first one.
Yep.
So that's the first one. That is like the shotgun approach. That's like, let's go wide. Let's give it, surrender to Facebook's algorithm. Everything will work out. Kumbaya. Not really, but you get the point. Yep. So that's number one. Number two is we call it like the starter campaign. And what that is, that's more like the sniper approach. And what the purpose of that is how do we go to audiences that are a lot more specific ages that are a lot more specific, exact gender that we know that we want to market to. And the purpose of that is, if we're trying to make a bet, we want to make it as close to a sure thing, whereas the other method is like, we want to market to everyone and we'll let Facebook figure it out. So for example, we're marketing a product for UTIs, right? And for UTIs, like, we obviously want to market to women, but if we do the Facebook controlled method where, it's completely open, even though both male and female are both chosen for a UTI product, Facebook's algorithm will find the women. Facebook's algorithm will optimize for that.
Sure.
So that's that approach, the open approach. This, again, like the shotgun, and this is like the sniper. And the sniper is, you're looking for audiences that are smaller. So 500,000 to 1 million. Again, if you're in a smaller region, it might be 200,000 to 500,000, but you're looking for that smaller audience. You're choosing the exact gender. You're using an age bracket of anywhere between 20 to 30 years. So for example, 35 to 55 is very common for a lot of our types of clients that we're working with. And then you can choose either post IDs or dynamic creatives, and you're using that in a way that you already know, ideally, that's proven, and all you're doing is audience testing one by one by one by one. And again, for both of these audiences, the target is, or the budget is 1x CPA. So if you want to get a customer for $50, for example, you would set the budget for both methods at $50. Or if you want to get it for $30, that whether you get it right now at that level or not, if that's the target, you set it at $30. And the purpose of both of these campaigns is you want to stack up a lot of $30 or $50 or $100 campaigns, find winners after 3 days. If they're not working within 3 days, or they're complete failures pretty quickly, you turn them off and you keep going. And that process, it's super boring. It's kind of like annoying. But what you're doing is you're stabilizing and creating stability across multiple audiences instead of just 1 or 2 or 4 ad sets that are spending $1,000 a day total, where you'll see a lot more volatility.
Fantastic. And I'm assuming the next stage of that is a graduation stage of some sort once you establish what the winning audiences are? Okay, so fantastic. Back with us after a small little interruption there, but so you've got those initial 2 stages that you do, obviously letting Facebook do its thing. The next part is really just testing a bunch of different audiences at 1 times the CPA, and then I'm assuming from there you're pulling those winning ad sets, winning creative combinations, winning audiences, and this is when you're really putting into a sort of either a campaign or an ad account. There you're going to really scale and push things forward. Give us a bit of insight into your next methods.
Yeah, so once basically from this we found creatives that work and audiences that work, then we graduate them or move them over to another account. And the purpose of that account is just for CBO campaigns. It's a CBO, or with campaign budget, where the budget is at the campaign level. And the purpose of that is, now we're trying to get anywhere between $500 a day to $1,000 a day for the campaign budget. Now, depending on your CPA, you might be able to use like a calculation like 10x of your target CPA. So for example, if you have $50 CPA target, you might do $500 a day for 1 CBO. And again, for us, we have different types of setups that we go through and see what's actually working. So some of them might be for ad sets in that same campaign. And then we have proven campaigns now that or proven ads that we're using in that type of campaign. So again, the setup is that we have the CBO campaign would say 10x your target CPA. So if you're $50, now the budget is $500 at the campaign level. You have 4 ad sets, and then you have ads inside of that to see exactly from the same audiences that are already working with the same ads that are already working. And now you give it to Facebook for Facebook to optimize. And so that's what happens after the initial test.
Okay, fantastic. And typically from there, what would you see, or how far would you push that in terms of ad spend in daily budget before you sort of branch out into your other scaling methods?
Yeah, so basically what people I've seen, they're doing anything between 500 to 1,000 a day. For us, that's like the sweet spot that works. I've seen people who have budgets for CBO campaign that are 5,000, 10,000 per day, and like intense rules to like start cutting and pausing stuff if things aren't working. There's many different ways to like go about it, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to stack CBO campaigns. So once, for us at least, once we find the type of campaign that's actually converting for us, once we have that, then we're just trying to find more of those CBO campaigns that we can set up in that specific account, as well as additional accounts. And this is primarily for the people following so far, is primarily in lowest cost CBO campaign setup, but we also do cost cap and bid cap and see what actually works, different bid structures that work, and then it gets more complicated from there with automated rules where we are changing bids and budgets.
Sure. And do you have typical rules in place for your bid cap strategies? Is it sort of X amount your standard CPA that you allow for an allowable cost per acquisition? Do you do variations of, just to sort of put it out there in the one campaign?
Yeah. So, I mean, the answer to that question is like, it depends, but really the way that we go about it is we always start our bids lower. So we're talking about 75 to 80% of the actual target CPA. And then we see where things are actually working for that specific type of campaign structure, cost cap versus bid cap. And then we're able to see, because if you're using automated rules on top of that, then you can throttle ad spend up and down, or at least up when things are working. Because if it's okay, like that's one thing, and you don't really want to scale necessarily hard that day. But what you were mentioning with like our previous like structure, and we still use that. It just depends if it makes sense for that specific client, where we are using automated rules to increase spend, and we're using it, of course, to cut back on specific ad sets that aren't working. And so what that does lead to some days is you spend a lot of money, not a crazy amount higher, but higher than you initially budgeted for, assuming that it's still hitting budgets or hitting metrics. And so there, you just have to be ready for that. But just to make sure it's crystal clear, where we start is with audience testing and creative testing. That's where we start with two types of campaigns that I mentioned, which is the Facebook controlled and the starter campaign. Once you have that to 1,000 a day, we try not to touch CBO before that. Once you have that at 1,000 a day, now you're taking what's working at the ad set level and you move it to the CBO level. And what you're working on is how do you actually scale those campaigns with higher budgets inside of CBO campaigns. Once that's working, or you see some potential, now you add different types of CBO campaigns as well as automated rules in order to auto scale as well as auto pause campaigns for the day.
You're a wealth of knowledge. It's always fantastic to speak to you. I appreciate you imparting some of your wisdom and some of the behind the scenes insights to your own business. It's always great to speak to you. Thank you very much, Nehal. Thank you. Thanks for being on Staying On Point.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Staying On Point. Tune in with us on our next episode as we dive in, interviewing other fantastic guests, finding out exactly what makes them tick and how they've achieved their success.